everyone. Welcome to Pearls of Wisdom. Today, we're going to chat with Derick Borean about the challenges of developing mentally healthy workplaces and the role of rehab consultants and how they can assist and, work with employers to maybe grow that. So welcome, Derick.
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So Derick's co-founder and CEO of Altius Group and is currently president of the Australian Rehab Providers Association. And Derick's been involved in the rehab profession for more than 20 years. Derick, I hope that's right.
Yes.
And in the past, at some point, worked as role of as occupational therapist in the industry. So you're obviously well versed to talk about the rehab industry and what that can contribute to developing mentally healthy workplaces and assisting employers. So thank you for joining me today. So Derick, as we know, obviously, and I've been discussing this across the interview series, mental health has risen, very much in its profile, and it's a very significant issue for us all. A lot of people are struggling anyway, but with the pandemic, that's just, amplified issues, and the COVID climate is not helping. So statistics sort of show that about 3/4 of people saying mental health is actually an important consideration when applying for a job. So an employer choice, it's an issue. And a half believe that employers should be doing more in this space. So certainly the view is that employers have an obligation, and the legal the legal push is for employers to take on more responsibility in that space rather than considering it a personal issue that people just have to manage. And look, PwC in their report sort of show that for every dollar invested, it's roughly a $2.30 return. So the financial incentive is there for employers, but I'm not sure that they understand how to actually go about reaping that benefit.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear your take on how the rehab industry and rehab consultants can assist in employers in creating a mentally healthy workplace. So, what would you consider? What role can the rehab industry and rehab consultants play in that space?
Yeah, sure, Danielle. I mean, they're all, really pertinent points you raise. Obviously, one of the roles of rehab consultants is to be at the workplace and be involved with employers. And so to that extent, there's a very privileged and important position that they have in assisting employers to understand injuries, and whether those injuries be physical or psychological.
Yeah.
The context of how those injuries came about, but also the context of how people are going to recover at the workplace. And look, for any physical injury, as most of you will know, if you've been injured physically, there comes a bit of psychological overlay that happens regardless. And so people's environments are very important to their recovery. Psychologically safe environments obviously optimize recovery, and they help support people who are recovering from injuries and obviously help prevent injuries. So I think rehab consultants, because they have a role within the workplace, they're meeting employers, they're forming relationships with employers, and they're building trust with employers. There's a very privileged position that rehab consultants have to then influence employers and have employers understand what factors contribute to psychologically safe workplaces, and how to get the best of that in their environment and in their context. As you say, a lot of employers don't have the time or resources to get depth of knowledge about these things. So things that are pragmatic, things that can educate an employer on practices that make a simple difference and a real difference to their environment. So I think that's a big role that rehab can play.
So they're really in a prime position, aren't they? Because a lot of the time, the rehab consultants that are working with employers have got a trusting relationship with them. They develop that trusting relationship, so they're opportune to influence them, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a rare position. It's a unique position, and so there's a big role for rehab to play in that.
Yeah. So what are the main skills that you think rehab consultants have got or should advance or develop if they want to work with employers in that space?
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's understanding how psychologically safe workplaces are created and the behaviours that are associated with psychologically safe workplaces is really crucial. I mean, there's things that that are fundamental to these workplaces, or to practices and behaviours that create the environment. And for a rehab consultant to understand those and deeply understand them is crucial. You have to believe in them, obviously.
Yes.
And then that gives an ability to convey them. So things like an acceptance that errors are going to occur, that innovation and that changes require failure, that mistakes are depersonalized, and that there's a sort of team problem solving when it comes to issues in a workplace.
Yeah.
Other things like, a curiosity and a desire to sort of ask questions and to broaden discussions and encourage inclusion and to, again, team problem solving. I think those things are healthy. And then I think fundamentally, and I think, this sounds really simplified, but an authenticity around behaviours as well. So
yes, for sure.
Are you genuinely interested in what others are saying? Are you genuinely interested in acknowledging other people's ideas, whether or not you take them on or not, but able to bring other people into the organisation, into decision making, particularly if those decisions relate to themselves?
Yes.
There's a really nice ability to do simple things, and a consultant's ability to convey that to an employer, to build that into planning around someone's recovery, or to build that into cultural changes or creating an environment at a workplace that's healthy. They're doable, and employers can get their head around those things because it's a behaviour piece, or it's a way of doing things.
Yeah. I just adding on to what you're saying there, I think that's a really important point. I mean, I think a lot of employers in their mind have overcomplicated what it takes to. They think it's some very, very elaborate thing, and I think if rehab consultants got the power to sort of desimplify it and just talk about it in terms of behaviours and concrete things that they can do to make those changes. Because I think a lot of employers think, I've got to have an in-house registered psychologist to do this, and it's not that. It's not as complex as I think a lot of them, think it is.
No, absolutely. And look, the health profession is pretty good at complicating things, right? We use jargon, we use words, complicated. Yeah. We say things that we think others might understand, but they don't. So, this is not complicated. This is not complicated. In fact, you could argue that it's quite simple, but it does require the knowledge and then the application. Yes. And so, I think again, employers can be probably reassured about that they genuinely lack lack the knowledge. Yeah. But most of them are really well intended. They want to create a good environment for their team members, and particularly in the environment we find ourselves in today, looking after our team, our employees, whatever you sort of language you use, is crucial.
Yes.
And so most people really want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. So do you see that there's a role for additional training for RCs these days to sort of specialise a little bit more in that space, to do some more with employers?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of great resources, that are available for people that are curious, and there's some, fantastic work from Amy Edmondson that you can find online. She's done a lot of work around how to create psychological safety at work, and there's TED Talks and all those sorts of things that are available to people. Yeah. She does a really good job at kind of creating a pretty simple structure around psychological safety. And there's also, I think probably ideally, within the industry, and I know ARPA is very supportive of professional development activities and creating learning opportunities for the industry to take into employers and take into workplaces. I think that's crucial as well. So,
yes, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, what role do you see ARPA is playing in that space?
Yeah, look, I think it's got an important role to play. I mean, ideally, these concepts of psychological safety get more and more embedded into the more formalised training structures that exist. So, both for company directors, for example, right through to work health safety professionals and also allied health professionals. And if we can embed them into formal training structures, we'll get obviously a lot more momentum around psychologically safe workplaces. But the informal structures or the less structured learning, like professional development activities, webinars, online resources, are things that ARPA is getting behind and supporting. And they're available to, they're available to members. Obviously, they're also available, readily available online. So I think that's it's a great way to get familiar with what psychological safety is. Even if it's sparking ideas around how you might bring it into a workplace or into your own workplace. I think there's really cool ways of looking at it.
So from your experience in the industry, and obviously you're an employer yourself, what do you see as the main challenges for employers in developing a mentally healthy workplace? And, I guess you get feedback from rehab consultants and, I'm sure there are times when they're looking to return someone to work and they go in there and they can inherently see that the environment is possibly not as safe as it could be to return someone to work. And then they're trying to make that change with employers. What is the sort of feedback they give that are the main things that, get in the way?
Yeah, look, there's a few. I think, there's a rational, I think, there needs to be a compelling case for this beyond, although most of us would consider people's well-being an absolute compelling case, there actually needs to be a financially compelling case for psychologically safe workplaces. And I think that's the language that will cut through for a lot of employers. And if you're a small business company director and you're thinking, how do I create what's the point in me creating a psychologically safe workplace? These can be really key decision points. I've got a million other things that are important. Why would I spend time and effort on this? Because it is an investment that returns financial gain. But it also creates well-being, and well-being in a workplace environment has enormous benefits in terms of productivity, engagement, output, retention, high performance. And so again, countless research around this, including one that Google did to analyze what it was that actually identified their highest performing teams. And that found that the key factor in a high performing team was psychological safety. And so that applies to a construction site, it applies to any sort of trade just as much as it does to a professional services business or role. So look, I think making it really compelling, making the argument compelling, beyond just it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do because X, Y, and Z, and a financial return is important to that. And then having the resources and the knowledge and the education tools available to employers to support that. And again, that's, unfortunately, from a rehab perspective, we're often involved with employers who've already had an issue. Someone's been hurt at work, whether it's a physical injury or a psychological injury, they've been hurt, and we're going in to help that person recover and help educate the employer to support that and how to best support that. I mean, it would be great if that there's a little bit of investment at the front end to sort of prevent these downstream events occurring. And look, I think there's an impetus around that. I think there's some momentum around it, but there's always more that can be done.
Yes, absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much for your time today. I think there's some really great insights and for the industry and for people to, there's training available through ARPA as well, that you see you've got website stuff. So that's fantastic. And look, yes, I certainly see that there's a lot of room for rehab consultants to expand their work that they do into this space, and it would be a great resource for employers with the skill set that they've got to help them, navigate their way through those behavioural changes and cultural changes, of attitude towards people with mental health issues. So, so thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for joining us, Pearls of Wisdom, and hopefully one day we'll be able to do this again.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Derick. Thanks for your time. Bye.